right, welcome back. It's a Monday. It's the start of the work week, which means we're going to get dirty. We're going to get down into it. It's right. We have a very rare event coming up that we have to look at from a bunch of different angles here. Unique, if you will, where you may only see it once or twice on tour. We have to look back at Hawaii, the trip that was, and now the tour shifts from all the way out west to now just California with the Pro-Am. Ben Rasa, Eytan, Shander, Chris is producing. It's Putting for Dough. And we always have the early look, some leans in here, maybe even lock up an early card before we get out of here, Ben. And last week, let's start there before we look into this week in the Pro-Am and any major value.
Yeah, why not? We'll look a little back at the old golf on the island, late night
Nice
golf for us East Coasters, just warming up into the season. And I think we saw that. My biggest takeaway, hopefully people's cash some tickets, but my biggest takeaway is this is what we get in the early season. Elite players, some of them not ready to play per se. You know, a guy like Tom Kim missed the cut. Spieth, insane meltdown to not find the weekend. And certainly guys like Decky, Sanjay, another one like either non-factors or not even around for the weekend. So we're going to have to take some of that. There were still big opportunities to cash some tickets. You seem to have, you had a pretty good week, did you not?
Not bad, not bad.
Not bad.
I mean, between the show and the Discord specifically, and
Okay.
we'll promote the Discord, get in that before we get out of here, but it's always a nice tease when we can. Kirk, top 20, Montgomery, top 20. And then here we talked about our good friend from Texas, Christian, of course, Tom Hoagie coming in and winning that trio. So that was nice. But look, one thing I did want to bring up real quick before we move on. Of course, we remind everybody that's just filing in a little late to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. Over 50K, which is just amazing, Ben. So take a bow, sir, by all means here. But you mentioned Spieth. Before that, we had Colin Morikawa. We've had two big names, and it's just specific, right? But we've only had a couple of events. We've had some pretty big meltdowns this early in the tour so far.
Yeah, I mean, Morikawa's certainly was more magnified because it was to win the event. Spieth was to make the weekend, which was just a bizarre situation. But again, I think it just speaks to the erratic nature of it. And I know for me, you know, most of my guys actually didn't go that route. It was just more uneventful, you know, like Corey Connors, guys like that. They were in it. Yeah, they were fine. You know, Steven Yeager made the cut, came, I believe, 28th. So not terrible. Not what you're looking for with outrights. So we turned the page, and I mean, I know I'm always complaining. I'm not a big fan of this now. I'm glad we're in California, but we still don't have the events that I want to talk about. But good value on the board, and that makes me excited.
There's always value where you're going to find it, and that's what makes me excited. Is that you're excited with value? I'm excited that you're going to find the value. And yeah, this is not a great week overall to bet on when you just look at compared to majors or compared to even events that we've seen, the two in Hawaii. There are different circumstances that you factor in. It is a 54-hole cut. There are some things that we'll talk about with celebrities and amateurs playing in this event and how the tour has slowed the greens down and tried to expedite pace of play. A lot of things that we have to factor in that from somebody who plays and follows like you do, it's annoying. And as much as you do complain, Ben, I think you are fully justified in your bitching and moaning and complaining and everything else this week. Okay.
In all aspects of my life, all of it's warranted. It's a 3-course rotation. It's a Saturday cut. They're celebrities. It's like 8-hour rounds.
Awful.
You mentioned they have to set up the course for the celebrities more. Like you can't have a torture chamber out there asking Larry the Cable Guy or whoever the hell is on the course to do that. So it's just something we deal with. Now let's talk about the positives.
But hold on a second. I want you to hold that thought real quick because this is a little tease hangover, right? That we're going to get to as soon as we come back from the good news. This is the best thing that's going to happen. All right. As shitty and as crazy and as wild and as volatile as this tournament is that we're about to break down, the easiest thing that's going to happen is anybody who's new to DraftKings is going to turn $5 into $200 instantly. Now, there are a couple of things here, right? You have to be in a state where it's legal. You have to be 21 or over. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Look, either you are brand new to DraftKings, somebody in your house, your family, your job, somebody you know, somebody is new to DraftKings has yet to sign up, take advantage of this here. There's a link below. It's super easy. Click that link, right? Sign up, take 90 seconds out of your life, deposit $5 and only $5. I'd say bet. Now, it doesn't matter what you bet. So if you're watching this on a Monday, take the Tampa Bay Bucks. If you're watching this on a Tuesday ahead of time, take the heaviest favorite in the NHL. If you're watching this on Wednesday, then I don't know, take Grayson Sig to win it all, right? Whatever it may be. It doesn't matter. As soon as you place the wager, $200 right back into your account. Ben, this is the easiest thing that we've done so far.
No doubt about it. Great opportunity. You want to take advantage of all that. Again, you summed it up nicely. So value on your value, never hurt anybody.
Awesome. Speaking of that term, specifically value here, let's get it cooking. Top tier. And to be fair, at the MX, top tier is pretty thin when we normally talk about top tier odds. So, for example, if you're looking at like the 15th highest or even 10th highest odds on the board, those are normally reserved for what we would call as like, what would you say? Like mid-range. So where would you like to begin, knowing that we have a couple of things, little caveats, as you mentioned, to talk about with this event specifically?
Yeah, so where we were talking about there, big time. I was gonna say before we talked about some of the deals, one of the positives, the big positives, there's some players here. Like, say what you want about this event, say what you want about all the nonsense.
Right.
You got names. You got John Rahm, Scheffler, Cantlay, Finau, Xander, Zalatoris, Tom Kim, Sanjay. Like, this is no joke field. And with that, you get an elite starting point for your card. Now, it's a double-edged sword. John Rahm, we just saw this a couple of weeks ago. It's like, oh, great. John Rahm's in the field. If he loses, the value on all these other players is great. Well, he's hoisting the trophy, and your tickets are going up in flames. And it's hard for me to bet John Rahm at 6-1. It's just difficult to get there. He's an amazing player. He's the best player in the world. At him and Rory in my book, but regardless, I'm gonna try to beat him. And for me, I'll just get things started. I would rather play Scotty Scheffler at almost double the odds than go to Rahm. Like, you have Scheffler sitting 11 and 12, 11, 12 to 1, depending on where you're shopping. Although that's not the best number in the world. I mean, Scotty Scheffler, we know what he can do out there. Elite player. He's gotten some reps. He always seems ready to play. The ball striking is fantastic. Should tear this course apart. And again, he hasn't been quote unquote winning. Well, 3rd, 9th, and 7th in his last 3 is not exactly anything too disappointing. So I expect him to be right there. I don't have a lot to say at the top. I'm interested to see what you say with these big names. I'm going to just put Scheffler's name out there kind of as that starting point for me.
I love it. And again, normally looking at, I mean, think about this. How often is Scotty Scheffler 11-1 good value? Right? Outside of maybe a major, because you've got a couple of guys who are going to be triple digits and Scheffler maybe depending on how he's playing. But even then, like the year that he had last year, Ben, I don't know if he's 11-1 as the field gets heavier. Right? So you've got Rahm, and I love it. The fact that you've looked at this number specifically, I think I'm coming at it on the other side here, which would be trying to take advantage of somebody who is more of a mid-range number that I think has, and it's already dipped because this was 45-1 earlier, and Tom Hoagie's now at 40-1. We've seen successful history in this type of event, right? At the Pro-Am event, also at Pebble Beach, on top of this 3-course event here, where at the 54-hole cut, especially dealing with that extra adage of baggage with a partner. And who the hell knows? You get paired up with a yapper, you get paired up with somebody nervous, right? Like, Ben, you would not want to get paired up with me as a professional golfer and me being the amateur, because I'm talking your ear off, all this different shit here. And it's like, dude, you're trying to win money. I'm a 45-1 mid-range shot. Like, can you please shut up? Here's the thing, though. He's playing really good golf. On top of that, this is a familiar event. It's a familiar course, and it's already dipping. Again, 500 points in my favor since we locked in on the show sheet at 45-1. So he's at 40-1 right now on DK. I always shop around, but this was a little shocking to me. I'll combine the two. He and Taylor Montgomery, and I'll slide Montgomery in there 35-1. But those would be the two that I think are, I hate to use the term because I know you cringe at it because it's very rare that this applies, but it seems quasi mispricey-ish a little with the field. Both of these.
No, I have no problem starting my card like that, which is like, to me, you could classify them as almost mid-range type guys.
Yes,
You know,
and
they're
I'm
not
towing the
Scheffler
line there.
for sure. And totally different types of players. So Tom Hoagie's certainly got the course history. We know that. He played last week. He was good. You just couldn't get anything going around the green. He gained 5 strokes on the approach and he came in 41st. That doesn't really line up. That approach game is really looking good. And the result at Sony is not indicative of that.
Sure.
Taylor Montgomery, I mean, I'm not sure what to do with this guy because he breaks all logic, because he is not the best putter in the world. He's the best putter I've ever seen at any point. He gained another 6 strokes putting. He gains basically 5 or more strokes putting in every event that he plays, and that's not supposed to happen. Now, he lost 4.5 strokes on the approach. He's not a great ball striker. I think we know that. So maybe you get just you alluded to this already, easy greens.
Yep.
You give this guy easy greens, forget it. I mean, it's going to be just a putting clinic. And that's a name that I think we have to watch, because when you can gain strokes like that on the greens, he's always going to be in contention in some regards.
That's, I think, a really interesting element to attack from a betting standpoint. And we'll talk about top 20s before we get out of here for sure on our final card, Ben. But this is an easy event and it's meant to be even easier. So if you have guys who can putt and putt well and get hot and streak in the positive way, and you know, our birdies are better and gained, you know, total strokes gained putting, pardon me. If you have guys who can really take advantage of the easy conditions on the green, then you're pretty much set up for a made cut, especially with the 3 different courses and knowing the familiarity there. So I think you can start to target that just from a strategic standpoint. So what I did was kind of take both, and I know I messed up, but to be fair, you did earlier on something, tried to nail me, and I'm not going to bring people behind the curtain. All I'm going to say is that we're even. All right, we are even.
Debatable.
Today,
it's like those commercials. I'm going to throw the challenge flag. Like, I want to see the replay on some of this shit. I don't know what you're talking about.
Where's Flo with the challenge with the replay?
Yeah, that's right.
Here's what I'd say. My top tier was basically taking mid-range guys and applying them to the top tier logic. So you have a wide open lane to work with whatever mid-range you want to attack.
Yeah. And again, I think that my strategy with stuff like this and, you know, Hudson, Swafford and co, like when you play weird tournaments with formats like this, I think it lends itself to taking longer shots because it's awkward. There's variance, it's unknowns. It's not, all right, we're all lining up, we're playing how we normally play. And that I think helps. So my mid-range, my card is going to get more interesting as we go. Like I mentioned Scheffler at the top. He's not a guy that I'm in love with in the betting markets because of the price. Now we get a little more interesting to me with the Aussies in the mid-range. Cam Davis and Jason Day are both in that 50 to 60 to 1 range. 2 totally different players. Cam Davis is an elite birdie maker, an elite scorer. You mentioned birdies are better. You mentioned some of the approach off the tee numbers. I mean, this guy checks all those boxes. He played at Sony, 6.6 with the ball striking, -3 with the putter. That's fine for me because all you got to do is flip the putter, and now we're in business. So this is someone who has shown really consistent form. Certainly the wins will come. He was a winner at Rocket Mortgage. And then Jason Day, it's obviously a little different situation. He's not at the height of his powers, far from it. But I do think this is the type of golf that maybe he seems to like. You know, we've seen him at the Pro-Am, not here, but Pebbles Pro-Am. I mean, he destroys that course. It's maybe his best spot in the world to play. And there's some of that I think you can take here in terms of the long rounds, in terms of the easy setups, in terms of not a ton of pressure on the game. Now, where his game is at is a very real question, but I'd rather find that out in the outright market than like the top 20 market. Because if it's bad for Jason Day, he's packing his bags after Saturday. There's no doubt. So I wouldn't mind a sprinkle, but Cam Davis, you got to like that number at 50 to 1.
Why do you think that relevant to this field, he's sitting at 50 to 1. Again, he's 10 points higher than Hoagie. And then, Thigala's there. Thigala's there. Jason Day, you mentioned Hadwin. We'll talk about him, though. He's dipped significantly since the show sheet this morning, which I'm not surprised. But why? Well, here's the thing. Cam Davis is not only at 50 to 1, but he hasn't dipped at all either with other people taking money.
I mean, I think there's kind of a somewhat out of sight, out of mind. Like, he hasn't been doing a ton. He played in the swing season. He's making the cuts, but he hasn't really threatened. I'm just going to rattle him off. 37th at Shriners, 29th at Zozo, 13th at CJ Cup, 32nd at Sony. Putter's cold. Like, it's not building up, but at the same time, I think he's a lot closer than other people do. He also was third here a couple years ago. He's got experience. He knows what he's doing. And again, when you can score like that, he will make enough birdies to win the tournament. Will he make enough mistakes to lose it? Probably. But if he doesn't, I don't worry about his scoring at all.
I'm going to throw one name out, and he's lost 1,000 points of value so far. He's gone from 6,500 to 55 now, 55 to 1 mid-range quasi, I guess, long shot, depending on when that opens up. But our mid-range on this show, if you're new to it, is pretty wide. And then all I'm doing is just, again, I'm appealing to not only course history and event history, but success with that combined. And it looks like outside of Siwoo Kim, nobody has a better, at least last 36 rounds here when it comes to just overall strokes gained than Adam Hadwin. And I know that there are individual and personal concerns with Adam Hadwin as far as how he's playing and health. But in this field and this event, it seems like a pretty decent number to attack, especially if you were going to ladder and maybe top 20 Hadwin, which essentially is making a cut in a deeper push.
I mean, so there's a couple different things with Hadwin. One, look at the history. I mean, clearly the guy likes some of the stuff that's going on here at the American Express. He has thrived here before.
Yep.
Two, I'm going to give you, I'll give you some credit. I know you say I never do, but I will here. I like the way you're building your card. You clearly have a golfer type in mind. Taylor Montgomery, Adam Hadwin, these are not the longest hitters in the world. They're going to rely on their putter.
Thank you.
Hadwin will rely more on his irons than a guy like Montgomery, but it's the same concept across the board. Even Tom Hoagie, he relies solely on the approach.
But you don't need distance based on proven winners here who have not, like Siwoo, as I mean, like you've got guys who have not needed a blast off the tee at this event.
I mean, again, you can look at all sorts of iterations, but like some of the guys, Swafford last year won. He's a longer hitter, but like Tom Hoagie, Lanto was up there. Brian Harmon was up there. Molinari was up there. Denny McCarthy was. None of these guys are off the tee anything. So I get it. I absolutely get that mentality. I am going a little more aggressive with the off the tee game where you got to destroy these par fives. Cam Davis does that. Scheffler doesn't apply because he does everything well. He's an elite player. But I see how you're going with these guys who are going to roll it really well potentially.
Maybe that will allow you to absorb, digest. I'm not really sure what the word is. My long range shot, because normally when a number is so large attached to it, you just start with the eye roll before I even get into it. But we have to look. Mentioned we had a good week on the Discord, and we continue to have good weeks, good days. It's not just the two of us. Lofty, Lindquist, Aaron Berg. We have so many people that you see here on a daily basis that are part of our Discord, and we have a ton of things that are happening on a daily basis. Large cards, different sports, Ben's all over the place. Like things are popping now, especially as the NFL season winds down. We are still as aggressive. You don't know what you're going to get. You may get a play on the ice. You may get a player prop in college basketball. You may get shots on goal. You may get lacrosse, college lax coming up. Like you have no idea. The fact that the NFL season's over doesn't mean anything. We're just ramping up the stuff in the NBA, the current stuff as well. Of course, there's plenty of golf. So you want to make sure that you jump in. And the beauty of it is that your first week is free. So how about that? You can just nose around and see what's happening and ask Ben for parlays or not. And your first week is free.
If you ask me for parlays, your first week is free and you won't have a second week. I'm not messing around with it. No, but
You
in
can
all
ask me for
seriousness,
parlays. That's
you can
fine.
ask him for parlays. It's a great community. Again,
It's a
just
lot
hop
of
in
fun.
for the week. That's what I always say. Like,
Yep.
even if you have no interest in sticking around, why not hang for the week? It's a good week, a lot of football, a lot of NBA and stuff. So we'll see you in there. We're growing the community. It's a ton of fun. And just another reason why we want you involved. Link in the description of this video for sure.
So this is where you can have a lot of fun with major long shots, because if it's built, and I'm going to stay true as much as I can to how I've built my card. I know you either will, or just maybe you can factor a couple of other things in here, but this is, again, it's a different event. It's an easier event. If you find the right putter at the right time, all of a sudden 125 to 1, 150 to 1 doesn't seem as daunting of a task, because they're just constantly taking advantage of scoring opportunity after scoring opportunity. So I am curious, because when you mentioned value, yeah, you found it with Scheffler, don't get me wrong, but this is where you can really dive underground and get some good, cool shit.
And now this is where I think this is the best part of the card this week. And B, we'll talk about the outrights because that's fun to talk about 100 to 1 shots. But this is where you're talking like 9 to 1 for a top 10, 4 to 1 for a top 20, 3, these are guys you could look to across the board. And I'm going to throw 2 out there, and I'm going to take a strategy that I like to do early in the year. Very simplistic. Guys that showed me they're in form. Chris Kirk, he's in form. JT Poston, he's in form. We saw him last week. They both played very, very well. Kirk extremely well. +5 with the irons, +3 with the putter. He came in third. You had mentioned him at Sony. JT Poston was a guy that I had mentioned as well, and he gained strokes across the board in all 4 categories. Both of them come in hot. I love their games for this setup. 90 and 110 to 1. Again, you may vary if you shop that around, but you're talking about pseudo triple digits and guys that I like, from outrights to top 5s to top 10s to top 20s this week. A lot of value in this range.
Yeah, Chris asked a question in our show chat, so I didn't want that to go unanswered, because I'm sure he's not the only one that's thinking this, Ben. By all means.
Sure. So, question from the man behind the glass was no Grillo. Grillo looked good last week. He only lost 2.5 strokes putting en route to missing the cut when he was 2 under after Thursday, and then he completely did what he does. The problem with him, amongst many problems, is that you can't survive here if you don't roll it at all. Because with the celebrities, with the 3 courses, if there's no wind, you got to go low. And Grillo's played here 3 times, and his best putting performance is 0.4 strokes gained putting. That is like my internet speeds. Shout out. So it's just not good at any point for him. I don't think that he can make enough birdies in the DFS streets. Will I probably get to him in the mid-range? Maybe. You want to talk about outrights, though, you got to get the ceiling with your putter, and I just don't see Grillo doing that, barring something truly obscene.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. And you're not, to be fair with Grillo, you're not going to take an unnecessary belligerent risk just to work him into the show.
No, I do that on the DFS side enough. I'm not going to punish both channels with them.
All right. I'm going to hit you with a guy in Ben Griffin. All right. And I'm going to leave it at that. I think you can get him just north of 5 to 1 as far as top 20 is concerned. That's worth a shot here. Top 40, of course, when it's up, would be the best play. But this is a guy who, to the field, is ranking in similar as far as iron play, putting, who can get a little streaky. And look, smaller sample size because he's Ben Griffin. He's not Scotty Scheffler. So you're not going to see multiple stretches of Ben Griffin dominating the tour. But what you are going to see are glimpses. And I think if you can catch a glimpse here, especially on a 3-day event where you're moving around, these are easy scoring courses. Looking at one thing, I mentioned birdies are better gained. He's top 10 in the field here. He's also top 10 in a couple of others when you talk about just strokes gained putting. So that's where I looked at a longer shot who can play, who can strike the ball exceptionally well on his best day, and who can catch some flames on his best day with his putter. And now again, Ben, all of a sudden, You're talking about a guy who is way down on the leaderboard. If those two things work out, that number is much better to the winner as far as where we were talking about on Thursday.
So Ben Griffin is a name that's come up now. He's starting to get some steam in life. I had no idea even who he is. He's a Corn Ferry guy.
Yeah.
We saw him in the middle of 2022 get on tour, and he played 5 events and he lost strokes off the tee in all 5. Not great. Still had some decent finishes, 4th at Wyndham. He's come back in the swing season and now to start this year. Last 3 tournaments, Houston, RSM, and Sony. Off the tee, he gained strokes in all 3. So he's clearly fixed some things with his driver, or just, keeping the ball in the fairway. That's really helped because the approach game is strong. The putter has been good recently, and he's an erratic player. You can look and it's a little volatile, but a 4th at Wyndham, a 16th at Houston, a 12th last week, plus 550 for a top 20 for this guy. He's a name to at least bank, if nothing else, because he's playing good golf.
Let's wrap up our final card, but I just want to reiterate something that you mentioned as far as the erratic off the tee. That comes, I think, and clearly this is just the nature of the sport, right? The longer you have to be off the tee, the more risk you have of being erratic, right? So in a course like this, to where you don't need to, and look, if you're missing the ball and it's just off, then there's no hope. But my point being is that you can maybe rely on some strategy there to where it's either lack of distance or lack of true accuracy on longer courses. And it's not just Ben Griffin, but maybe somebody else in that final spot. All right, my friend.
No doubt. And I just want to say one caveat there, because strokes gained is somewhat not complicated. If you bomb the ball, you're still going to gain strokes off the tee, even if you spray it. If you're short, you got to keep it accurate because you're losing distance.
Correct.
If you have both of those problems, you're screwed. If you have both of those problems in a good way, you're Hovland or Rory. And this guy has seemed to figure out, okay, even if I'm aggressive, as long as I don't get extremely punished, I'm still going to gain strokes off the tee. And it started to show in the results. So I definitely think that's worth pointing out. My card, like I said, it's going to be a traditional stereotypical. You expand as you get lower and lower. I think you could honestly omit the top range if you wanted to. If I had to pick a guy, it would be Scheffler. Then we start to get to those 50-1 ranges in the Aussies. But man, where I really want to live is the JT Poston, the Chris Kirk.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, some of your guys, Patrick Rogers is in that range. All these guys are like 100-1 and like 3 or 4-1 for top 20s. What a target-rich environment. One that I really think we could see a lot of guys pop up on that first page this week.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, Montgomery, Hoagie, I think more so Tom, as far as my top 20 that I would stretch a little bit, but it's Hadwin. And clearly, when you start to look at Griffin as well, where you can start to attack. So that would be real quick what I would add. And we'll remind you one more time. It's a really simple process. You've been watching, you've been hanging. Maybe you're like, all right, what are these guys all about? At the very least, we've earned a thumbs up. And then if we haven't earned a sub, just look down. There's like 50,000 plus people who have already done it. So clearly there's a sense of FOMO here, right? You're probably thinking like you're missing out on some shit. So either way, thumbs up, subscribe. Anything you'd like to add before we tell people we'll see them again next week?
No, we're going to see you again next week. And certainly, again, we'll see you sooner than that, because you got a free week of Discord coming to you if you click that link. It's just a good time in the sports world with everything going on. If you have any questions, you see it on the screen at Shander Show, at JazzRaz DFS. We just want you as part of the Odd Chopper family. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. Excited to hopefully cash some tickets and then do it all again next week.